What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Welcome back, listeners. Well, actually, welcome, listeners, to the first episode of currently a nameless podcast featuring Harold Ladenburg. Harold, can you introduce yourself?
We're still meeting.
Hi everyone, my name is Harold Lundberg. I'm a high school senior, and I'm just looking to have some fun. Maybe talk about some things. You know, get through this quarantine period, and I think it's gonna be a fun time. I'm excited to talk with these fellow Americans.
And in the opposing corner, we have Matthew Johnson, a southpaw up-and-comer from Louisiana, Minnesota. That's not a state or a city. And he has red hair. He's handsome. And oh gosh, this is weird now. Matthew, introduce yourself.
It's all subjective. I'm Matthew Johnson. Should I give my middle name too?
No, we're not going to. No. That becomes a legal issue.
Oh gosh. Okay, let's not go there. I'm actually from DC, contrary to the podcaster host's belief. I'm also looking to talk about
Alrighty, so I think that we might as well just jump into the topic of the day. So the topic is love, Love, four-letter word. But so let's start with the question: what is love, and how and how should we define it? So, what is it, Samuel? What is your understanding of the concept?
Well, I think love is a funny word because it's more of a companionship. Love is like this heightened form of friendship that's become romanticized in American society. We always see it pop up in pop culture and art and research and psychology, but love it's not really a tangible thing. Would you consider love tangible, Harold?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think that there's, love can be broken down into a whole bunch of different categories. There's, affection, there's attraction, there's companionship, there's, dependence. I think that there are many different aspects of it. And, I was also, in preparation for this podcast, I was also thinking about, love is viewed as a very different thing by very different people. So speaking of which, Matthew, what's your take on how do you understand it?
Can we back up first? Let's spell it. No, we all know how to spell it. Never mind. There's a song about that, which speaks to, I think, the value of love, because that's one of the things I think about is how I don't know, I'm looking for a better word besides value of love comes through in the fact that so many songs in modern culture are written about love. Like if you listen to the radio, I'd be curious to see like what's the percentage. I mean, there are too many millions of songs to count, but like what's the percentage of songs that are written about love as opposed to like the trees or something, like you don't see many songs written about trees. I mean, trees are cool too, but
yeah, I have to agree with you there. I think that love is a very artistic thing. It's emotional. It's very human. But let's get into some of these questions that we have, some more specific things rather than just the grand "what is love," because let's be real, we're all 18-year-old guys who know very little. So, but let's just have a chat. So, what do you guys think? So, Matthew, what's your stance on the concept of a soulmate or a true love?
Well, it's such a tricky thing because I can speak for all three of us. I don't think any of us have found our soulmate per se. I mean, I'll speak for myself, and it's one of those things where it's like you can't necessarily imagine or preconceive what it would be like so much because you haven't found that yet. So I can begin to imagine, what it'd be nice to have in a partner who I think I would like to spend most of my life with, but I don't know because I have not met them yet. Or yet.
There's another song. Another
Yes,
song title.
exactly.
All right.
An example of how love comes through in
Yeah,
songwriting.
I agree. I think that true love is something that is very hard to believe in if you've never experienced it for yourself. But that's sort of the leap of faith, as it were. Samuel, what's your take on this?
Well, it's curious. It's curious. Forgive my poor humor. It's our first time on a podcast, and I'm nervous. And love is a topic that also brings out a lot of insecurities and vulnerabilities in people. A lot of people are scared to fall in love. So when I think about love and true love specifically, the modifier that's often attached to the word is something rare, like this, like you can have one true love. And we're brought up watching Disney flicks where we see princesses going out and princes going out trying to find their true love. And true love's also almost always the catalyst or the solution to the plot of the story or the film or the TV show that you're watching that is evolved around the subject. And I think that while it is possible to find very deep companionship, this kind of one-off enigma that we call true love isn't really, maybe not really a thing, And maybe that's just me speaking as a cynic, but I think that it's just something that's overconceived and overanalyzed in American society, and not something we can really take at face value,
Well, jumping
Yeah.
off that point, if I may, I think since you mentioned, companionship and especially Disney princesses, movies with Disney princesses, I think Frozen, to their credit, worked against that notion quite well. When the whole idea throughout the movie was true love's kiss is gonna break the spell, as that's the usual story, isn't it? This happened to be an ice spell, but rather than it being, the handsome prince, it's her sister, which was an unexpected surprise that again breaks those notions very well.
No, I agree. I also think that we should make a distinction between soulmates and true love, because I think as we were talking about just now, that true love is something that you can't really know until you've experienced it for yourself, and so you have to just believe that it's real, which a lot of people, especially young Americans watching Disney films, grow up with this. It's instilled in them that it's a real thing, and that it's something that they should long for, strive for, and it's attainable. But I also think that that the concept of a soulmate is very different. I think that the idea that there is exactly one and only one person out there for everyone, I think that that's much harder to believe in than a concept of true love, because I think true love is more variable. It's my concept of true love could be finding someone where I have a very happy relationship with them, and I think and that could be my true love. But I think that having a soulmate is kind of harder to believe in.
Well, I think that's what the movie differentiates between, is that the bond between the sisters can be, I guess, is measured as true love, given that the spell is broken, so it doesn't have to be romantic necessarily, especially when the romantic interest turns out to be a terrible person.
There are trolls in Frozen, and that kind of segues me to a point I wanted to make. How long do you think it takes to fall in love?
Yeah, it's a good question, because trolls, I think, really know about that, because that's their whole thing in the movie. They and I don't know about trolls in real life, what they're like, but I don't really have a point. I'm going to send this over to Harold. Harold, what's your thought?
All right. I think, but it's interesting you bring up the trolls, because I think magic is an interesting factor here. Because the Cinderella concept of true love is very magical, and the slipper and so on, and I think that there's a pumpkin involved, but I think that this is actually a nice segue into sort of Shakespearean love and tragic love, because I think if you take Romeo and Juliet, for example, their true love isn't magical in the same sense. So I was wondering, what is your guys' take on true love when you remove the concept of the magical sense of it?
Well, I do. Oh no, Matthew,
Go ahead.
you go ahead. Forgive me.
Thank you. I mean, I guess it's sort of like another thing you see quite often is like, the number of posts you see on social media between a boyfriend and girlfriend or whatever, and saying about the number of days they've spent with their best friends. So I guess that speaks to when you've reached a certain point in your relationship where you consider them not only like, you have attraction to them, but they're also your best friend by that point. That is hitting the mark of what one would consider true love, I guess.
I wanted to make a point about Romeo and Juliet, and I think that their epic conclusion is interesting because I personally think that if Romeo really loved Juliet, forgive me, he would have the strength to live for her. But instead, he decides to die with her, which almost seems, for me, it seems, it doesn't make much sense. And when I look back on reading the novel with Mr. Kender, you may know of him. He always pointed out legend for facts. Mr. Wiley, he added you. When I look back on the novel, on Shakespeare, I think about it. So this is where I'm going to tap out for a minute and review the novel of Romeo and Juliet. And Harold's going to take it away. But I just think that if you love someone, you got to live for them. Dying is the easy way out. It's a cop-out. So maybe what they were feeling was purely infatuation.
That's an interesting distinction. Yeah, I mean, is there a distinction between an infatuation or an obsession and true love? Is true love only true if it's reciprocated? I mean,
ooh. So we're experiencing technical difficulties on Matthew Johnson.
I apologize. I turned my mic off so the desk would not be too audible.
Oh, it's all right.
What do you have to say about that?
Thank you. I was going to say, I think that was much of what the plot centers around in Frozen is that Hans, I keep returning to this movie, but Hans capitalizes on that infatuation that he sees that, what's her name? Oh my gosh. Anna is so desperate for love, or what she thinks is love, that he capitalizes on that because he's eager to assume power and take the throne. And so, yeah, he is able to make her fall in love, or what she thinks is fall in love with him quickly, and fakes love. So it's similar to Romeo and Juliet, except that Romeo and Juliet is they're both infatuated with each other. But yeah, that's a good point of like, at one point, do you move away from that to actual love, where you consider the person not only someone you're attracted to, but also your best friend, and that may just be a matter of time. But
now this actually is a nice segue into kind of the chemical aspects of love, specifically the chemical oxytocin. So it's said, I'm going to pull up some facts here that we have. Harold is our fact guy, just so everybody knows. He's got the information. He's done all the checks. He actually works for USA Today. But regardless, oxytocin is basically the happy chemical. When you hug someone you have a crush on, get a kiss on their cheek from someone you love, your brain is going to start shooting off oxytocin, and it's the warm and fuzzies.
How does that differ from dopamine? Since
hey.
Since I'm the expert on this research that
Please, I did, fat guy, go ahead.
I think I'm going to take the science angle here.
Take the wheel.
All right. So according to the BBC, there are 3 stages of falling in love.
Who is the BBC?
The British Broadcasting something
All
corporation, right. I believe. Reputable resource. Anyway, there are 3 stages of falling in love, and at each stage there are different chemicals involved. The 3 stages are called lust, attraction, and attachment. So in the lust or sort of sexual desire stage, testosterone and estrogen sort of drive that feeling, and then attraction. It can either follow lust and sexual desire, or it can be entirely its own category. But it's what some may call the sort of love-struck phase. And this phase is dominated by the chemicals dopamine, norepinephrine, which is also known as adrenaline, and serotonin. And so when you think about these drugs, and this phase, think about, crushes and, heart palpitations when you're around someone that you have a crush on. And then the last phase is called the attachment phase. and you can sort of look at a lot of scientists look at the attachment phase of love as sort of the ultimate evolutionary goal of love. Um, that and what blew my mind when I was researching this was that loving someone, for their faults, for what is quote wrong about them, the little things, is actually an advantageous part of the process, because it allows us to move on to what to this attachment stage where couples commit to one another to the extent that they raise children together. And that is what sort of the scientific benefit, the evolutionary benefit of love. And so I suppose my question is, with all these chemicals going on and the evolutionary component of it, does that sort of invalidate the feeling of love? Can there be true love if it's all coming from these chemicals?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I think that it kind of goes into the fact where people say maybe 6 months into a relationship, the bond really gets tested because the happy chemicals start going away. It's a little less about the puppy eye stage, and it's more about your connection and relationship with the other as a human. So I think that true love, it's a longer, the spectrum is much wider, and it's a longer timeline than a lot of people perceive. We also hear the term love at first sight a lot, and that I personally don't. I think that's all false. But it's more of seeing how your companionship kind of develops and prospers over time, where you really see if it's your soulmate or the one for you, and it's just not this very temporary short term thing. You
Yeah,
can't
I
really.
think, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that actually brings up the concept of platonic love. For those of you who don't know, the platonic being in the sense of Plato, who had this idea that there was a really strong bond, loving bond between mentor and apprentice, between two men, which, didn't have any of the, well, we assume, didn't have any of the sort of sexual lust sense of this, of the love. So, and I think that that's also a nice segue into the question of, can you have, full form, true, whatever is where it maxes out, maximum capacity love without the sort of the sexual component.
I feel like you can. It's almost, well, I suppose it's hard to go into, but I feel like it's the kind of the facade of what a romantic relationship is the physical attributes and how they relate to each other sexually and all those aspects of things. When if you really get down to the nitty gritty, it's more about how the two function as a pair, how they complete each other's broken puzzle pieces, all that cliche romantic stuff. And it's not really about how hot and steamy things are at the beginning. It's more about the long term. That's why I'm sure there are marriage statistics that are more specific than this, but I'm sure it's something like 60% of American marriages end in divorce. Like it's that first chunk where things are really only on surface level. And as you actually continue through time and let things develop, that things become rooted and deep, and true love actually starts to fashion itself.
Yeah, I think that sort of made me think about sort of from, I think we've been coming at this from sort of one angle, and I just want to make sure to include everything. How should we think about love? I mean, you brought it up at the beginning of this podcast about sort of this how it's ingrained into the culture, and I think there's sort of stigmas involved around the concept. So I think how should we think about love? Should we invalidate people who don't have the impulse, or who don't pursue it? And is it something that's missing from your life if it's not something you work to attain or you search for in your life? I think I think that there are a lot of people who for whom love is not an ultimate goal of their life, and maybe there's companionship or something else, but I think so what is your thought on that, about like the expectation, the societal expectation of love?
I think that firstly, it's definitely there. I totally agree with you there. And I don't think it's I don't think it's healthy to really expect that of people, because there are plenty of people in America and across the globe that are asexual or may not have as a keen interest in partnership or romantic partnership. And I think that it's wrong to label love and sexual relationships and even partnership to some degree as like this requirement, like a checkbox for humanity and like your psychology and all that stuff, and how you actually function as a human with other humans. And I think that that's a lot of that's just from, I mean, it's hard to go really far back with it, but I think a lot could be said about kind of how partnership was more vital, imperative in the past, in like throughout evolution, just in like the means of reproduction and survival, if we really go far, far back. And now I think in our contemporary society, it's a little less relevant to actually how we live our lives and how we survive with modern medicine and having a overpopulated species on the planet. Not, we can get into that another day, but yeah, I think it's just this deeply rooted societal expectation that hasn't been uprooted because it's been there so long, but shouldn't be there in the first place, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, I think another point to bring up there is about, the concept of marriage, and you were talking about the statistic on how many marriages end in divorce. So I think just sort of generally we should explore the question of what is the relationship between love and marriage. And I think, because I think a lot of people, sort of myself included, have gotten the concepts confused, that marriage and love. And I'm not I'm not exactly sure how those two concepts um like work together, because I've never been married, and and I've never experienced true love, in the sort of magical sense that we've been exploring. So I think, and of course, if true love is so rare, and yet most people, the majority of people, are married, what does that say? And especially, marriage is till death do us part, but also 60% end in divorce. I mean, I think that there's just a lot of stuff to talk about there.
Yeah. Well, here's how I think about it. Marriage was really kind of developed. I hate to keep saying socially, but we're going big picture here. Marriage was developed as a mechanism for kind of continued lines of heritage, continued lines of wealth. It was more of a social function than it was actually a tangible, representation of love. And if we think about fish, there are thousands of fish in the ocean, and none of them are getting married, but I'm sure they still feel love for each other. And I don't think it's necessary to. I don't think marriage and true love need to go hand in hand, because if a goldfish wants to be with another goldfish, they can be together and not wear wedding rings, on their little fins. So I think that it's wrong of us to expect the two to be tied together. And I think even now in our society, in our generation, people are less and less inclined to marry, as it's kind of this archaic social tradition that people aren't as interested in anymore, because it's, again, less vital, just as reproduction and companionship are less vital than they used to be. So yeah, I think we need to think about the fish for a little bit.
It's very interesting you bring up fish, actually, because there's a famous sort of rabbinical story, where yeah, I'll just read it to you. A rabbi came across a man who was zealously eating a very fine fish. The rabbi asked the man as to why he is eating that fish, to which the man simply said, "I love fish." Perplexed, the rabbi said, "You love fish? That's why you took it out of the water, killed it, and boiled it? Don't tell me you love the fish. You love yourself. And so you took it out of the water, killed it, and boiled it to satisfy your tongue and tummy." According to the rabbi, most of the love that we see, that we feel these days, is fish love, and I can't agree more. Sorry, the "can't agree more" was the story that I was reading. So this concept of fish love has actually been circulating for a long time. Of is all love for our own benefit? Is it, do we love others for the companionship that it provides us? And is it really selfless? I think that gets into a bit deeper of a philosophical question of, do we do things selflessly? But
Yeah, I
Matthew,
think
what do you have to say on that?
Matthew has a lot of things to say here, but I'm gonna open him up with something to consider. I think that unconditional love, which is a rarity, I think it only exists between immediate blood family. Like mothers and fathers feel unconditional love most of the time for their children. That's biological programming that goes way, way back. And I think that that can't be matched by a connection you make out in the world with another person who you didn't really conceive and give birth to. Like, that's a very unique relationship to have. And I think going back to the fish, if you go back to Finding Nemo, now Nemo didn't have a mom.
I
for
never
his
saw the
young
movie.
life.
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, the story, it goes like this. Nemo's a fish. He goes on a swim, and then he's in a tank, and then there's this braces girl, and then his dad comes and Nemo's a fish. And sorry, not
But
my
do
best.
they find him?
Yeah, they do find Nemo. There's also a character named Sharkman involved, but we'll get into that later.
I believe it's Bruce.
Oh, Bruce, yes, Bruce, Sharkman. But regardless, I apologize for the
No
tangent.
Bruce. No Bruce.
That is Mr. Sharkman to you.
Yeah, actually, yes. Thank you. I apologize for the tangent there. Finding
Just a
Nemo.
reminder to our viewers: fish are friends, not food. Is
Oh,
his mantra.
He just did an allusion to Finding Nemo.
Yes.
All right. So far we have Frozen and Finding Nemo.
All right.
Where else are we gonna go from here?
Well, it's moments like. Can we go to Australia for a second?
I would love to.
All right. Now hear me out. Koalas are like little bears. I'm so sorry, guys. I have a point to make here. Just
They
give me a
are
second.
They are little bears.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
koalas are little bears. They climb trees.
No. Okay. This is.
My spirit
Huggable.
animal.
I'm going deep here, so everyone just give me a second. Does anyone remember The Empire Strikes Back, the film?
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
Do you remember the following film?
Return of the Jedi.
Beautiful. Now, if you go back to the original George Lucas production, the original recording that would have screened in theaters, they end the movie with the song, the Jub Jub song. Now, this is sung by the Ewoks, and they sing Jub
Yes.
Jub Jub. We need the love, Jub Jub Jub. We'll
Yeah.
spread the love.
Of
Yeah,
course.
it's that
yeah,
one.
yeah.
And it's an iconic moment. And it's curious that you end this kind of 3-film saga, this masterpiece, pinnacle American culture 3-film saga with a song, the Jub Jub song about love. And
They say the word love in there.
oh my goodness, should we pull up a recording of the Jub Jub song to quickly
Of
listen?
course.
Okay, let's everyone meet me on YouTube. I apologize for the tangent, listeners. If you are near a computer, we encourage you to also look up the Jub Jub song.
It's a timeless classic that you can
remember
appreciate with friends and family.
I remember the lyrics. Jub Jub and
All right, so when everyone's ready to press play, let me know.
well, could you play it and we would
Also-
hear it through your microphone?
No. I'm also hearing, is someone playing Drake somewhere?
Well, Drake talks about love.
That's also true, but we're talking about the Jub Jub song right now.
This might be my microphone acting as a radio antenna, picking up signals.
I don't think that's how it works.
I think it is. Let me try muting my mic.
All right, we apologize for the technical difficulties here. It is. He is a radio.
Yep.
How is
And I
that
got a new-
possible?
I got a new cable. I thought it would work, but
Well, love.
Love.
is it better now? Yeah. When I hold the cable, maybe I'll just hold the cable the whole time because it.
All right. So this Jub Jub song. I'm gonna listen to the Jub Jub song. Okay.
There we go. I fixed it.
So what is the
Oh,
point you're
I
making?
apologize. It's nub. It's Yub Nub.
Yub Nub.
Yes.
With
Here
the
we go.
ghosts. With the ghosts. We're gonna listen.
Yes.
We're gonna take a listen.
I'm just quickly listening here. I may slightly sing along.
No, I'm gonna play it into my microphone.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, play it. Turn it up if you
Turn
can,
the
or get it
speaker.
closer.
Turn the speaker towards the mic. There you go. That's the screen.
Do you have any more volume there? Solid beat. Now,
That was the Yub Nub song.
if we're not going to get added by Lucasfilms or Disney, we have no copyright. We have free. I have no idea what we would use to actually protect our content here, but we'll get into that later.
Innocence. Blissful ignorance.
Yeah, how about that? But I brought this up because in similar films like Interstellar, you'll notice that love transcends time and transcends the universe at one point, and that's important to note because love is something that, you know, it's shared between. It can be shared between people, but I think one of the most important loves is the love for oneself. I think that's at the basis of all, human interaction and human connection, because we can't learn how to love others until we learn how to love ourselves. And I think what the Ewoks here are getting at is nub yub, yub
Actually,
nub,
Yub Nub. Yub Nub.
yub nub, which actually translates out of Ewokicanese to love yourself. And I think it's important as a Jedi to learn to love yourself, because then you can do some tricks.
It was actually right after watching that movie that Justin Bieber wrote his timeless classic, Love Yourself.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yes, I wasn't sure when you said the lyrics involved the word love. I wasn't sure, and the word love is not explicitly used in the lyrics, but it's actually better.
Now, hold. I'm gonna read you.
Let me just read these lyrics for you. Yub nub, yub nub. Ato mito pichikini, gnab, octofling oa. Oh, and this is where it really gets deep here for a second. Koti chatab yub nub, and then it repeats, but it's a little different to really
Right,
highlights the nuances of love.
I think we get the picture.
Okay.
Yeah, no. But one of the key lines here is celebrate the love, and this is after the massive space victory that brought peace to the galaxy, and
Also killed a lot of people. Let's be real. Let's remember that.
Whoa! That's true. Rest in peace. But
I mean, they were bad guys, but
the last
we don't care. But
It's also
the last thing they say in the Yub Nub song is celebrate the love, because that's how they got there.
Good times. Come on.
All right, this tangent's gone too far. Let's get back on track here.
But I do think that there's a good segue back to what I was saying a while ago about loving yourself versus loving other people and being selfless about it. So if one of the most important kinds of love is loving yourself, how does that relate to loving other people? Because I think some people might even argue that, I mean, not myself, of course, but some people might even argue that loving your own children is just an extension of loving yourself. Loving your own sort of genetic code, wanting to stay alive. So what are your thoughts on that, Matthew?
Well, I'd say love for your children as it relates to love for yourself doesn't necessarily have to do with genetics. It's more your interpersonal life, because the only person who's closer to you than yourself is your immediate family, and so your behaviors within a household will affect your children, and you can sort of put on a mask or a charade in front of your friends, but how you're truly feeling about life or in a particular moment or just over a long period of time will be most evident at home, and so that'll end up being reflected onto your children, or whoever's at home with you. Samuel, take it away, please.
That was, and I'm just sitting here because that point made me think,
It was hashtag deep.
And it made me think, are we reflections of our parents or reflections of our parents' love? And, those are two very different things for some people, like a lot of children aren't fortunate to have two parent households, or sometimes they have an abusive mom or abusive dad. And that really does make an impact on their character and psychology. Is psychology a word?
Yeah.
Mental state, mental health, the way their brain works.
No, I think you can say their psychology.
Yeah, but it's tricky. It's tricky.
it's a 4-syllable word. So
No. I meant I meant the nuance involved in parental love. But
no, it is. So okay. I think that that's sort of branching out into a different area of discussion. And just to bring it back a little bit, there was one thing I wanted to bring up in this podcast was Aristotle's concept of eudaimonia, which is
that umami? Like the
it's pretty close. It's
Similar
almost
to
that, but it's
edamame.
like
no. Edamame and umami are two very different things.
and so is eudaimonia. So
Okay,
let's
so
get
we're
back to
just
that.
yeah, all right.
So eudaimonia is Matthew and I learned about eudaimonia in Miss Solomon's English class
Did I?
this year. Yes, yeah, we did, didn't we? I mean, we weren't in the same period. He was first
From
semester. I
what
was second.
piece of literature did
I think we
you
just
learn
learned
that
about
is-
it in concept. Well, either way, I will explain it again for those of you who are unawares. Aristotle's eudaimonia is this concept of flourishing.
Okay.
A lot of philosophers have looked at like what is the ultimate goal of life in some sense, and so without getting too deep into that question, I think Aristotle's sort of answer to that question is this concept of eudaimonia, which is flourishing, which is I think can be seen in sort of the idea of the American idea of ample subsistence almost. That you are doing as in simple terms, it's doing the best that you can, and so in essence flourishing. So I wanted to ask if love is essential part of flourishing in life, and or can it serve as your own eudaimonia, your own flourishing?
Now that you mention it, I'm remembering exactly what we were talking about. Yes, I couldn't remember the name of it, but yes, I remember talking about eudaimonia as flourishing was the key word I remember. I think love, both for yourself and or with another person, could definitely be measured as a sense of eudaimonia. Now it's tricky because I don't know if that might be what Aristotle intended. I don't know if he was one for true love. He was more of a thinker, so maybe he was better with self-love. But I think in short, my answer is yes.
I think one other question to bring up again, without going too much into the topic itself, but is how does love for one another, love for each other, your children, your partners, how does that relate to love for a higher power, a love for God, a love for life, even a love for a love for God? How do you think that kind of ethereal love relates to other kinds of love?
That's a big question. I feel I hate to use the word the modifier submissive, but I feel like the love you feel for a higher power is always in some way lowering yourself to be with them or to be connected with them. Like it's not similar to a marriage, for example, when it's a 50-50 situation where you both are staying on the same level, looking each other dead in the eye during the relationship. I feel like with a higher power and ethereal love, you're always looking up. It's always this, please grace me with any affection you could give towards me, and let me be. It's a submissive love. It's a submissive relationship, And I think that I'm not sure you should classify that as love. I feel like it's not a healthy relationship. I would almost go as far. Now here comes a hot take. I would say a relationship with God is usually inherently toxic. It's giving him all this authority, all this privilege, and you're just bending the knee to him and saying, please give me your grace, forgive me for I've sinned, all this stuff. Now that could be me being a cynic again, but I feel like we shouldn't compare kind of man to man, human to human, and all that kind of love to that you would feel with this kind of like thing that exists in the ether that's so above us,
Yeah, I agree. I think if God were a real person, if God were my brother, if I were, and I loved him in the way that, you know, and like I had two brothers, and I loved my actual brother as I do, and I loved my God brother as I love God.
You lost me there for a sec.
I think you're picking up on what I'm putting down.
I think I
Oh
really
yeah,
didn't.
no, I picked it up, and I actually want to pick it up and put it back down on a new point. You
It's a
know,
little heavy for me.
here we go. No, just hear me out, because we never answered this question properly. Now, there's a New York Times article on it about 40 questions to ask that begin the process of falling in love. Kind of these questions that open you up, make you be vulnerable with another person, and give you insight into their character and how they've developed throughout their life, and kind of their notions for love for themselves and for the people around them. And it gets back into we never really answered the question of how long you think it takes to fall in love, because right here they say you can start falling in love in sub 15 minutes, which I think is a little absurd, and kind of goes into this notion of, we were talking about the timeline of love, but I would say it takes multiple years to really fall in love.
Well,
would you
we never
think
really
of it in
defined
months?
love.
Oh,
I mean,
well,
Matthew, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think it goes back to what Harold said about the 3 stages of love. I think within 15 minutes, you've definitely gone at least hit lust at least, and maybe reached attraction. But I think it's hard to get to a sense of a point of attachment within 15 minutes, unless you're like at a party with someone you really can't leave their side or something. But I think it depends. I mean, it's like maybe within weeks or months you can reach what you would consider as a point of true love with a person. And it just depends upon the relationship and the interactions you've had with your partner. I mean, for one thing, the number of times or how often you get to see them will have a major effect on that. You know, if you can only see them very occasionally, if it's a distance relationship, that's going to affect how long it takes for you to reach that state of true love.
Alrighty. Well, that concludes part 1 of this podcast, and we'll see you back for part 2, more on love.